It doesn't roar at you. It doesn't beg to be seen. It simply stands there, 9.9 million square miles of silence, and waits for you to make the mistake of thinking you understand it. You already have an image of Canada, mountains and maple syrup, polite cities tucked beneath permanent snow, clean, cold, comprehensible. The problem is that image is a disguise. This film begins with a crack of light, not a metaphor, an actual fracture in ice, in ancient stone, in the face of someone who carries a memory the rest of the world forgot to ask about. Watch for it. It will come back. Here is the central question this film will chase for the next 80 minutes. Why does the second largest country on Earth remain one of the least understood places on it? And what exactly has it been quietly concealing? Most nations announce themselves. They build monuments to their own importance, publish the numbers, broadcast the landmarks. Canada does the opposite. Its most staggering features are either too old, too vast, or too far north for a casual glance to register. Take the sheer scale. Not as a statistic, as a physical reality. You could lose the entire continental United States inside Canada and still have room left over. Drive north from Toronto, and 4 days later you are still inside the same country, and the real wilderness hasn't even started. But size alone doesn't explain the silence. Japan is small, and the world knows every inch of it. What makes Canada disappear isn't its dimensions. It's the texture of what fills those dimensions. Something the outside world has consistently failed to read. The land itself is the first clue. Beneath the boreal forest, beneath the tundra, beneath the lakes that outnumber every other nation's lakes combined, there is a foundation so ancient it predates complex life on this planet. A foundation that has been recording events for billions of years, in a language most of us never learned. And that foundation is still moving. Right now, as you watch this, the ground across vast stretches of Canada is physically rising. A slow, relentless rebound from the weight of ice sheets that shaped this continent long before human memory begins. New land is forming. New river systems are drawing themselves into existence. The map is not finished. That detail matters. A country whose ground is still arriving cannot be pinned down the way a settled geography can. Canada resists the definitive caption. It resists the tidy summary. And it has been doing so, quietly, without complaint, for as long as anyone has tried to describe it. Meanwhile, the Arctic, the part of Canada most people picture first, is warming at a rate that outpaces even the rest of this rapidly changing nation. A nation already heating at roughly twice the global average. What that means for the land, for the people on it, and for every climate system connected to it is only beginning to be understood. So here is the first thing to hold on to. Canada is not a place in stasis. It is a place in motion. The geology is moving, the climate is shifting, and the identities built on top of both, indigenous, settler, urban, wild, are colliding in ways that have no clean resolution. The rest of the world tends to look at that and see nothing, polite nothing, empty nothing, cold, photogenic nothing. A northern backdrop for other stories. What this film argues is that the nothing is the story. Consider how a country of nearly 40 million people spread across the second largest landmass on Earth can feel, from the outside, like it barely occupies that space. Cities of glass and transit cards pressed against wilderness that has not meaningfully changed in 10,000 years. That tension is not incidental, it is definitional. Walk far enough in any direction from any Canadian city and the infrastructure ends. Abruptly, completely, and you are standing in something that operates by entirely different rules. Rules older than the nation, older than the continent's naming, older than the memory of anyone alive. And that is where the disguise gets interesting, because those older rules were never unknown. The peoples who have lived inside this landscape for thousands of years, the Cree, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Inuit, and dozens of others, developed systems for reading this land with a precision that Western science is still working to catch up to. The silence Canada projects to the outside world is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of a place that chose, or was forced, to speak in registers the outside world didn't have instruments to detect. That distinction changes everything. Now look again at that crack of light. It appeared in the ice a moment ago. Pale, sharp, almost surgical. The kind of fracture that looks like damage but is actually revelation. That image will surface again, in stone, in depth, and in a human face you haven't met yet. And beneath it, if you listen past the wind, there is something else. A low resonance, the kind you feel before you hear. Pressure from very far down. The earth, making itself known. The world wrote Canada off as scenery. Mountains worth visiting, winters worth dreading, neighbors worth appreciating for their courtesy. A comfortable shorthand that let everyone move on to more dramatic stories unfolding elsewhere. That shorthand has a cost. Because what gets missed in the comfortable reading of this country is a set of realities so consequential, geologically, climatologically, culturally, that getting them wrong doesn't just mean misunderstanding Canada. It means misunderstanding the systems that regulate this entire planet. This film will not let you stay comfortable. It will take you into rock that remembers conditions no instrument measured and no civilizations witnessed. It will take you to ground that is actively becoming, ground that, in living memory, did not exist. It will ask you to sit with knowledge systems that predate the written word by millennia and consider what we lost when we decided stone tablets and university press runs were the only forms a real record could take. Canada is not hiding from you out of shyness. It is hiding because it is too old, too complex, and too alive to be captured in the frame most of us brought. So, if the foundation of this country has been quietly recording the deep history of an entire continent, what exactly is written there, and who has been able to read it all along? $4.28 billion years ago, something hardened here, and it never let go. The Canadian Shield is not a feature of this country's landscape. It is the country's foundation, a single continent-spanning slab of ancient rock that makes up nearly half of Canada's entire landmass. When geologists talk about the Shield, they reach for words they almost never use. Words like primordial, words like original. Because what sits beneath the forests and lakes of central Canada is some of the oldest exposed rock on Earth. Older than the first fish, older than the first tree, older than almost every mountain range still standing anywhere on this planet. Most people look at Canada and see wilderness. Raw, open, unwritten. What they're actually looking at is the opposite, a surface that has been written and rewritten across deep time, one layer of pressure and fire and collision at a time. And the Shield doesn't hide that history. It wears it. Think about what those ages actually mean. The rocks of the Shield were already ancient when the first complex animals appeared in the seas. They were ancient when the dinosaurs rose, ruled, and vanished. They were ancient when the first humans crossed into North America. Everything we call history, all of it, happened on the surface of something that was already unimaginably old. But here is where the story turns strange. If this is among the oldest rock on Earth, where are the mountains that should come with it? They're gone. The Shield once carried mountain chains that rose nearly 40,000 feet into the sky, taller than anything standing on Earth today. Over billions of years, erosion stripped them down to the rounded, modest hills you see now. What remains is the skeleton, the deep interior, the part that was just too hard to wear away. What's left isn't small, it's just quiet. Then, roughly 1.8 billion years ago, something punched through that quiet. The Mackenzie Dike Swarm, a system of ancient magma intrusions locked into the Shield's bedrock, stretches across a distance so vast it is the largest known dike system on the entire planet. Not in Canada, on Earth. These aren't visible from the road. They aren't visible at all, most of the time. But they run beneath the surface like a hidden circulatory system, evidence that the shield has not always been still, that it has been broken, flooded with heat from below, and then sealed again, carrying the record of each rupture inside itself. A low sub-bass pressure moves through the frame, then silence. Near the city of Sudbury, the rock tells a different kind of story, one that came from above. The Sudbury Basin is the eroded remnant of an ancient impact site, where a meteorite strikes so powerful that it scattered mineral-rich ejecta across the surrounding geology, concentrating rare metals in ways that would take humans billions of years to discover and mine. The shield didn't just record what happened here. It collected it, held it, preserved it at depths and pressures that surface time cannot touch. Which brings us to something happening right now, hundreds of miles to the northwest. In the Northwest Territories, diamonds are being pulled from the earth, not from surface deposits, but from kimberlite pipes that carried them up from more than 150 miles underground. These stones formed under pressures that exist only deep in the mantle, and the only reason we can reach them is because ancient volcanic vents punched through the shield like needles, delivering them to somewhere close enough for humans to dig. The shield didn't yield those diamonds easily. It held them for hundreds of millions of years before giving anything up. But perhaps the strangest feature of the shield is what the glaciers left behind when they finally retreated. The ice didn't just flatten the land, it scrambled it. The drainage patterns across the shield today are what geologists call deranged. Rivers that don't run to the sea in logical lines, but loop and stall and reverse, pooling into hundreds of thousands of lakes with no organized outlet. The glaciers disrupted the topography so completely that the land still hasn't figured out where the water should go. This isn't disorder, it's memory. The shield is still carrying the shape of the ice that once covered it, still holding the impression of a weight that vanished thousands of years ago. And that weight, that remembered pressure, is slowly being answered. Released of the glacier's burden, the shield is still rising. Fractions of an inch per year, measurable, steady, geological. Terrain that didn't exist a century ago is quietly emerging from beneath lake water at the margins of the shield. In other words, the ground under Canada is not finished arriving. A single crack of light, this time through ancient stone, not ice, catching the edge of something that has waited longer than anything else on this continent to be seen. Every mountain range built since this rock hardened has come and gone. Every ocean that washed across this continent has receded. Civilizations rose and fell on other continents while the shield simply continued, enduring, recording, remembering. The shield is not a backdrop. It is a chronicle, written not in words or symbols, but in pressure, heat, collision, and time. The oldest continuous record of planetary history still accessible on the surface of this Earth. The question is, who learned to read it? And what happens when those who could were silenced before the rest of us ever thought to ask? The shield doesn't speak in a language geology invented alone. For the past 2 sections, we measured it in billions of years, in craters and diamond pipes, in the slow arithmetic of ice retreating north. And every number was real, every formation earned. But there is another system of knowledge mapped onto this same rock, older than any scientific survey. And it was never written down because it didn't need to be. The Katunaxa, the Iyarhe Nakoda, the Naiti Sitapi. These nations read the land not as passive terrain, but as a living document they were responsible for. Archaeological and oral records suggest they may have known the passages beneath the Columbia ice field, the cave system that would eventually be called Kastelgard, long before any European set eyes on it. Think about what that actually means. While Western science was still cataloging the surface, generations of indigenous people had already descended into the dark beneath the ice, already understood what lived down there, already carried that knowledge forward in the one medium that survives everything: human memory. That is not folklore, that is applied geography sustained across centuries. But here is where the story fractures. When surveyors arrived, when cartographers began drawing lines across a land they declared unmapped, that parallel system of knowledge was not consulted. It was sidestepped, then systematically dismissed. The shield was reclassified as raw material, hard rock to be mined, waterways to be dammed, forests to be cleared, a geometry of extraction that had no room for a geography of relationship. And what was lost in that dismissal is still being calculated. The Haida Nation, on the islands off Canada's Pacific coast, did not accept that reclassification quietly. Their struggles to protect their ancestral territories are documented, hard-won and ongoing, a decades-long confrontation between a nation that reads the land as identity and a state apparatus that reads it as inventory. Farther east, the Mi'kmaq confronted a more specific threat: fracking exploration on unceded territory, land that had never been surrendered by treaty, never legally transferred, simply assumed into the resource economy. they stopped it. Not through lobbying, not through bureaucratic appeals, through direct, sustained resistance grounded in what they held to be the oldest legal principle on this continent. The land was never yours to drill. These are not isolated moments of protest. They are the same argument the rock has been making since long before anyone put a drill to it, now given a human voice. But voices can be isolated, ignored, or simply never amplified beyond a certain radius. Which is why what happened at Kingate in 1972 carries a weight that goes far beyond film history. "13 Inuit filmmakers, at a single workshop in a single season, produced 58 animated films. "58 acts of documentation, each one insisting that Inuit life, Inuit land, and Inuit ways of knowing existed on their own terms, not as ethnographic footnote, not as colonial curiosity, but as primary source. That crack of light through the darkness. Here it appears in a human face, in the act of telling, in the deliberate choice to record rather than let silence do what neglect could not. Two ways of reading the same rock, the same water, the same cold, and for most of recorded history, only one of them was ever broadcast to the world as authoritative. The collision between those two readings is not resolved. It is ongoing, live, and generating friction in courts and parliaments and on the land itself right now. The shield holds the record of everything that formed this country. But below even the shield, there is something the rock kept hidden far longer than any colonial archive ever could. A cave system so vast, so structurally improbable, that geologists argued about whether it could exist at all, and yet, beneath the Columbia icefield and miles of limestone, it does. If the land remembered, and the people read what the land remembered, what does it mean that something this large went unrecorded by every tradition that claimed to know this place? There is a cave in the Canadian Rockies where the walls have not changed in 10,000 years. Not because nothing happened, but because everything that happened is still written there, in the stone itself. Geologists call this a record. They mean it as a compliment. But here is what the word record costs you. It implies a passive surface, something that received an impression and held still. It does not prepare you for what actually lives inside that rock. Castleguard Cave sits beneath the Columbia icefield, more than 3 miles of passage, some of it still unreached. All of it dark, all of it cold, all of it remembering. Western science mapped it systematically in the 20th century. What the maps did not say, what the maps could not say, is that the Katunaksa and Naitisitapi peoples already knew this place, not as a curiosity, as a threshold. That gap between discovery and knowledge is not a small one. It is the size of centuries. Inside caves like Kastelgard, the formations that look most improbable turn out to carry the most information. Those cubic cave pearls suspended in absolute stillness. They do not form in unstable environments. Their geometry is a record of patience so extreme, it reads almost as stubbornness. The stone did not become that precise by accident. It became that precise because nothing disturbed it, which means the cave itself was protecting something for longer than any human institution has existed. Now consider who was standing at the entrance and who was handed a clipboard. Caves in Canada are not rare. What is rare is the full range of what they preserve. Climate signals locked in speleothems, ancient water chemistry, the faint chemical trace of atmospheres that no longer exist above ground. Every stalactite is a column of time. And beneath some of these formations, researchers have found biological material, fragments of life driven deep by forces we are still working to understand. Red squirrel bones, nearly 1,000 feet below the ice surface. No one has fully explained that yet. That silence is not a gap in the data. That silence is the data. The question that the cave keeps asking is not what happened here. The cave already answered that, in calcite and carbon, and the slow geometry of dripping water. The question is whether we came in with the right instruments to hear it. For most of the modern era, the answer was no. Western geology arrived with measurements and frameworks built for landscapes it already knew. Canada kept failing to fit. The Hudson Bay lowlands floor, that vast peat basin accumulating at an average depth of just over 6 feet, does not behave like European bog systems. It does not behave like anything mapped before. It is its own category, and it took decades to admit that. The Cree and Anishinaabe nations did not need decades. They had been reading those wetlands through direct, transmitted, embodied observation, noticing the relationship between peat depth, drainage, and the land's slow emergence from the sea, long before a core sample confirmed it. What does it mean to know something for generations, and then watch it be discovered? Ask that question and hold it. Do not let it become rhetorical. Here is what the peat itself records, if you know how to read it. Depth increases with distance from the shoreline. The land that rose first from beneath the ancient sea has been accumulating carbon longest. The ground under Canada is not a static floor. It is a timeline, written from the bottom up. That rising ground, still lifting, still arriving, is not metaphor. It is an ongoing geological event, and the communities who have lived on it understood its direction long before any instrument confirmed its velocity. The crack in the cave wall that lets in a blade of light does not illuminate everything. It illuminates one thing completely. That is how indigenous systems function. Not as a comprehensive map, but as a precise reading of the exact feature in front of you, accumulated over lifetimes. Science and traditional knowledge are not rivals for the same answer. They are readers of the same text, trained in different traditions, arriving at different chapters. The tragedy is not that they disagree. The tragedy is how long we kept them out of the same room. Canada's stone holds all of this without commentary. The glacial striations do not care who reads them. The speleothems do not favor one methodology. The peat does not negotiate. What the land holds, it holds with absolute indifference to our categories. It was here before the categories. It will outlast the argument. So when you look at a cave wall and call it geology, and when an elder looks at the same wall and calls it memory, ask yourself not which one is right, but which one you were taught to reach for first, and what that choice has cost everyone. The stone remembers. The question has always been simpler than we made it. Who did we trust to read? We have been pulling back layers: ice, rock, peat, silence. And every layer has revealed the same unsettling truth. The surface was never where Canada kept its most important information. But if that is true of the ground, what is true of everything we think we see above it? You have been looking at the right country from entirely the wrong angle. For centuries, the world approached Canada the way you approach a window, seeing only the reflection on the glass, never the room on the other side. Ice, courtesy, wilderness, clean borders on a map. These were the things you were handed, and most people never asked for more. But a window is not a painting. It exists so something else can eventually be seen. Every layer we pulled back across this film, the stone, the permafrost, the peat, the cave darkness, the knowledge that survived without being written down, each revealed the same uncomfortable truth. The surface was never the story. Consider what it cost the world to keep reading the surface only. Not just culturally, materially, in carbon, in climate, in decisions made about a landscape that was never as empty or as silent as it appeared. The Diavik diamond mine, opened in 2003, one of Canada's most significant diamond operations, shut down in 2026. A hole in the shield finally exhausted. What remains is not just a pit. It is a question about what we thought we understood about value, and where value actually lives. We drilled for what glittered. We walked past what endured. Here is the contradiction Canada forces on you if you stay long enough to feel it. This is a nation that presents itself as new, as modern, as forward-looking. And yet it sits on some of the oldest exposed rock on the face of the earth, tended by knowledge systems that predate any nation-state by orders of magnitude. That is not a footnote. That is the entire argument. The ground here is still arriving, not as metaphor, but as measurable fact. Land pinned under ice for millennia is still rising, adding terrain that did not exist when the first European ships mapped this coastline. Canada is, in a very literal sense, not finished yet. And neither is its reckoning. What the outside world called wilderness was a managed place. What it called silence held vocabulary. What it called empty was full of instruction about fire, about water, about exactly how long a peatland can hold a climate steady before the wrong decision tips the balance. The cost of misreading that is not abstract. It is already being counted in degrees, in floodlines, in species that no longer return to places they returned to for 10,000 years. And here is the thing. No map ever told you. The people who understood this best were never consulted about the decisions that put it at risk. That blind crustacean living in unbroken darkness below the ice, the one sealed into a world that stopped changing before human memory began. It survived precisely because nothing disturbed the conditions around it. Stability maintained, continuity protected. It is the smallest possible argument for the largest possible idea. Civilizations collapse when they stop reading the environment that sustains them. Canada is a test case, still in progress, for whether a modern state can learn to read what it has spent centuries failing to see. The answer is not yet written. That is not pessimism. That is the only honest position left. So what was Canada hiding? Not maliciously, not strategically. It was hiding the way ancient things hide, by being so large, so old, so indifferent to our categories that we simply could not see it. We looked for drama on the surface, the peaks, the glaciers, the famous cold. We missed the drama underneath, stone that remembers impacts from space, water that has not moved since before our species existed, bone found where no bone should be, light that appears in places light was never supposed to reach. that last image stays. A single crack of light, pressing through what should be absolute dark. Not because the darkness gave way, but because something underneath it refused, finally, to stay hidden. Canada is not a postcard. It is not a brand. It is a living geological and cultural force that was here long before anyone named it, and will be renegotiating the terms of its existence long after every name we gave it has been revised. We came here looking for the country we thought we already knew. We found something we are only beginning to have the language to describe.